Hello and welcome, friends, to our SBT, Secular Buddhist Essentials program. My name is Venerable Tarpa. I am thrilled to be here from a very snowy Indiana. We got about a foot of snow out there. Wow. So it's nice to be indoors in the warmth and teaching Dharma to all you fine people. I remember living in India. I never once shut my windows all year long, and I swore I was there for 10 years. I swore I would never, ever move back to a place that had snow. But Nawang was very kind to put me up when I was in need, and actually I'm really enjoying it. It's been really nice being up here. Again, I don't have to leave the house, so it's pretty from the window. Hey, enough of all that. Let's get to today's class. Hey, today's kind of fun because we're finishing up the history part of our text. So our introduction. So this is for the Secular Buddhist Essentials text and program. It's three parts. The first part is introduction, adaptation, and history. And so we're finishing that today with the later spread and decline of Indian Buddhism. This will probably take us to the new year. We're going to switch to the Skillful Living program on Sundays for 6 weeks. Then we'll come back to this. And then when we come back, we're going to be into what the Buddha taught. And that's the real nitty-gritty of the Buddhist teachings. That's the stuff you really all have been waiting for. Can't wait for that. Okay, with that said, on to today's topic. So, as Buddhism filled the hearts and minds of the people of India, travelers, merchants, and scholars started bringing these new ideas back to their own countries, sharing stories of a remarkable new teacher, the Buddha. Through modern Buddhism, although modern Buddhism doesn't proselytize, early Buddhism at the time of King Ashoka did, as we talked about a few weeks ago, with Buddhist missionaries being sent out into the world to share the Buddhist teachings in neighboring countries. The spread of Buddhism helped usher in an age of enlightenment, reason, and knowledge that profoundly influenced all of Asia while establishing the Buddha as the most predominant figure of this golden age of awakening. Even today, the influence of Buddhism can be seen throughout Asia and the world, an influence that is still shaping and benefiting the world in profound ways. I often talk about that. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Age of Enlightenment, which is a philosophical movement, if I remember, what is it, 1800s? But it was a philosophical movement that was kind of a revolt against the church and against monarchies. And so this is a very important time in Western culture. It's a time. The Enlightenment movement was a move towards science and reason and away from superstition, mysticism. And so I have often asserted myself that the Buddha actually did it first. And I do believe the time of the Buddha, he's ushering in his own age of enlightenment at this early time. It wasn't as secular as the Western version, but it was one of the first moves away from religion. And though the Buddha is a religious man, there is mysticism in it. It's far removed from the traditions of the day. He's one of the first to really bring reason in and argue against the idea of mysticism and demons and mystical things being affecting our lives. So I think that the Buddha does usher in this early golden age of awakening. There's a quote that I'm going to put in the text at this point, which is one of my very favorite quotes. It's a quote by Michael Wood, who is a BBC reporter. I think that's... And it goes, "So much of our history of the world is seen through its military conquest and conquerors. But the Buddha was one man who sits under a tree thinking and changes the world. To me, that's very profound, and boy, I just can't stop reflecting on it. There's such a truth to it, isn't it? That one of the great beings in history who changed the world through gentleness, through nonviolence, through compassion, wisdom, understanding. Extraordinary. Maybe that's the greatest contribution of the Buddha. Not so much how he changes the world, that he changes the world, but how he changes it in such a gentle way. With the spread of Buddhism throughout Asia, its teachings adapted to the needs of those cultures. For instance, in India, Buddhist monks relied upon the lay community for their daily sustenance. However, as Buddhism arrives in China, which possesses a strong work ethic, Chinese monastics developed the phrase, "no work, no food." Similarly, when arriving in Japan, Buddhism adopts the spacious, formal, and often stark style of Japanese culture of the time, a style we still call Zen, right? And of course, while in the Himalayas, it adopted the colorful and folkloric culture of Tibet. And now, as Buddhism is being established in the West, it is adapting to be suitable for our own time and our own culture. This would be this would be a good place in the text for a quote the Dalai Lama has. He says it would be a mistake for Westerners to try to practice Tibetan Buddhism the way Tibetans do. I'm paraphrasing, re-engaging with all the mistakes that Tibetans have made throughout history. I was at a meeting with the Dalai Lama in which he told us all that it was up to us, the Westerners have to create their own style of Buddhism. And so it doesn't seem that obvious. Most people really, in the Tibetan tradition, most Western, especially monastics, are really trying to follow it just like as they did. But I think SBT's taken the Dalai Lama's advice to heart. We really are creating a truly Western tradition of Buddhism. Okay, hey, with that said, I wanted to show you guys something. I like to have a little history in the text, and I like to share some graphics. I like pictures in my text. This is a timeline of the spread of Buddhism in Asia. I thought maybe you'd find it interesting, and it helps us to understand today's teaching. So this the spread of Buddhism here begins with the death of the Buddha in and around the 4th century. And traditionally they say it first moves to Sri Lanka, 3rd century. Thailand also in the 3rd century, but a bit later. Then it moves to China into the 1st century, Korea in the 4th, Japan in the 7th, Tibet a little later in the 7th. And then this age of Buddhism is defined by the decline of Indian Buddhism, 12th century, 1199, I believe. And that's marked with the destruction of Nalanda University in India. So that's a little bit of a timeline. I'll leave it up here in case you want to look at it a little bit. And that's fairly accurate. You know, everybody posits the dates differently, but that's in and around the same for most people. The one thing about Thailand's Buddhism is first introduced in Thailand 3rd century, but it doesn't become the country's religion or really established until much later, like 18th century, which is pretty remarkable considering we think of Thailand as being central to Buddhism in the world. Okay. I feel like a history teacher. So, the decline of Buddhism in India, again, is often marked by the destruction of Nalanda University in the 12th century. A little fact, Nalanda University is where all the masters came from that took Buddhism to Tibet. From the very beginning, Padmasambhava, all of the great masters, the Tisha, everybody, they all came from Abbot, and most of them were abbots of, they all came from Nalanda University, including Shantideva, and a great deal of them were abbots of Nalanda University. Some would argue that Nalanda University was the most important university, Buddhist university in India. It was just massive too. If you go to Bodh Gaya, you can visit the ruins of Nalanda, and you can still see just how massive it was. I think they employed something like 3,000 teachers, so you can imagine the amount of students that were there. So the destruction of the Nalanda is blamed upon Turkish Muslim invaders. It was reported that when it was sacked and set afire, the 9-story library of Nalanda was so immense it burned for 3 days, day and night. Reasons given for the decline of Buddhism in India are many, now Buddhism starts to decline in India earlier than the destruction of Nalanda. In and around the 7th century, Buddhism starts to decline. And it's not clear all the reasons why, and it's still being debated by historians to this day. As previously mentioned, the history of this age lacks any substantial historical evidence, and traditional theories simply don't answer all the questions of how Buddhism could almost completely die out in India, while other religions, including Hinduism and Jainism, survived. And I wanted to say something. I think I'll get to that. So, theories for Buddhism's decline in India are many. And instead of telling you what it is, because I don't know myself, I thought I'd share a few here. Mainly they talk about the invasion of the Muslim Turks, who slaughtered monastics and destroyed Buddhist temples and infrastructures. Stories are pretty brutal of this, that all the monastics were beheaded at all the Buddhist universities. And if they weren't, they were forced out of the monasteries. So the Turks really had it in for Buddhists when they invaded. Also, the loss of patronage to Buddhism by the governing Muslim Turks. So even after that, the Turks were tough on monastics. Also, you have the resurgence of Brahmanism or Hinduism, causing a lot of royal patronage. So as Buddhism starts to lose favor in the 17th century, Hinduism starts to becoming the prominent religion of the time. And all religions at that time were really reliant on patronage by royal families, by kings and queens. So if you lost that, your religion was in trouble. Another idea was that Buddhism's unwillingness to conform to the Indian caste system, the rise or the misuse of Tantra. So it's interesting, just as Buddhism starts to establish Tantra in and around the 7th century, it's also the time that Buddhism goes into decline. But I think it's kind of the other way around. I think Buddhism goes into decline because of the rise of Tantra within Hinduism. It becomes very popular, especially the magical elements of it. It becomes very popular, and I believe Buddhism literally had to take on tantric elements to remain popular. And as Buddhism was being suppressed within India, Buddhism and Buddhists simply relocated to neighboring countries where Buddhism was safe and was flourishing, especially the Himalayas. Another is Buddhism had become so institutionalized, aloof, and out of reach of the lay practitioners that after the destruction of the institutions, no lay substructure remained. There are stories of that the monks had become very, very greedy, and there was a lot of corruption. And I think institutionalized, that it was no longer a religion of the people; it was a religion of scholars. And another is Buddhism monasticism. Oh, Buddhism monasticism had degenerated, become corrupt, with institutions, monastics, and teachers becoming wealthy and materialistic. I should stick to the script. Because Buddhism was a non-theistic tradition, meaning that it's not based on a central or creator deity. Quite possibly the Turks were infuriated by that. And lastly, and possibly most interesting reason, is pertaining to the prophecy that predicted the end of Buddhism in India. And Buddhism, being the path of non-attachment, its monastics and practitioners were simply content to watch it pass away, that they didn't fight to keep it around. So although Buddhism almost completely dies out in India, it remained preserved, past tense, in South Asia, East Asia, and Tibet. Buddhism never completely died out in India, for throughout history and to this present day, small pockets of Buddhism have always existed, especially in the Himalayas, the Indian Himalayas. Hinduism did what it does best. It assimilated the Buddha into its pantheon of gods, making him the ninth of the 10 divine emanations or avatars of Lord Vishnu, the preserver. Buddhism remains largely absent in India until its recent resurgence, beginning in the late 19th and 20th century. And even today, Indian Buddhism is a very small component. Dr. Ambedkar, who drafted the Indian Constitution, brilliant man, worked with Gandhi. He started a Buddhist group, but they're a kind of a secular Buddhist group. But he started his group kind of with nefarious intentions, if you ask me. It seems clear that he wasn't so much moved by Buddhism. He was just looking for something that wasn't Hinduism. He was born at a low caste and suffered from it his whole life. So he was so against the caste system, and then so he decided he was looking for a religion. He looked at Sikhism, he looked at Islam, and he decided that Buddhism would suit his needs best. And so from there, he used Buddhism to convert low caste untouchables from Indians' caste system into Buddhism, and thereby stepping aside from the caste system, rescuing them from the caste system. But he also does a lot. He rejects a lot of the Buddhist teachings. People often consider him to be a secular Buddhist teacher and group, but there's a lot to be said about it. It's very suspicious, if you ask me. I've actually spent a lot of time in their communities. I used to teach in Hyderabad and at some temples there of their group. So I thought they were lovely people, but just the origins of the movement today are still pretty strange. But I do think it's safe to call them secular Buddhists. Oh, I'm going on and on and on. Anybody want to share? What do you guys think about all this? Miss Wangmo has a question.
Yes, I have a question. Could you repeat what year Nalanda University was destroyed? And also, could you put that timeline up again just for a few seconds, please?
Sure. 1199.
Okay.
So 12th century.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share? I can send this to you. You don't have to write it down,
I'm
Wangma.
all done.
Okay. And it'll be in the text as well. Can I take it down?
Yep, you could take it down. Thank you.
Oh, she's pushy. David, please.
Could you say just a wee bit more about what you seem pretty suspicious about Ambedkar. Uh, just briefly, could you touch on what doesn't seem right about him?
Yeah, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of his movement. It slipped my mind. Does anybody remember?
Uh,
Shiva, do you remember? It'll come to me. Um, yeah. So Mbekar is a great story if you have a moment. So he's brilliant. He's born as this brilliant kin. Him and his brother, brilliant, but they come from the untouchable, low caste, the untouchables. He goes to school only because the mayor or somebody high up in the town sponsors him. He's really not supposed to be there. They sponsor him and his brother. But because they're low caste, they're not allowed to sit with the other kids. They have a sack they put on the ground in the corner where him and his brother have to sit. They're not allowed to sit at a desk. And they're also not allowed to use the utensils and water jugs from any of the other for the students because of course that would pollute them and pollute the other students. And this is just the story that I read about his life story. And so once a day the principal would come in and he would pour water into their open mouths without touching the container to them. And that's how they would drink. And the story goes if the principal wasn't there that day, the children didn't drink. So this is what it's like to be an untouchable. But he rises to brilliance. He rises to the point where Gandhi, during the independence of the British, Gandhi appoints him as into his cabinet. Ambedkar is responsible for drafting the Indian Constitution. Because of Ambedkar, they put the wheel of law on the Indian flag, which comes from King Ashoka. So that's actually, many would consider that a Buddhist sign and symbol. And but then at some point, Ambedkar really is coming to terms with the caste system, and so I told the story so far that he tries to find a religion that it appears he's shopping, and he finds a religion that is suitable for what he wants. He changes it to work for his goals. Then they have these big events in which they turn the what's the word I'm looking for? Um, they turn people from Hinduism to Buddhism, right? Conversion
Yeah.
events with thousands and thousands of people. Want to hear a crazy one? So his group of untouchables, they would go to places like wells. Wells are not allowed to be, are not untouchables aren't allowed to go to wells. Open wells outside, it's forbidden. So he would take his group, and they would just, with thousands and thousands of people, they would take over the well, and they would do crazy things like drink the water and bathe and right. Guess what the town does in reaction to purify the well after the untouchables? They dump cow dung into the water to purify it because of the untouchables. Shiva, am I painting a really bad picture of India? Are you ever going to speak to me again? And more importantly, am I accurate?
I really don't know Tarpa because I grew up most of my life in the cities, like the big cities of Bangalore and Chennai. But I do have some um, uh, uh, like village roots. Like my parents are from a village. I did stay there when I was really young. Um, but the times are different, so
Thank
uh,
you.
yeah.
Thank you. You could have said, I don't know. Okay, with that said, I feel better now. So David, he does a lot of things that would appear to be secular, but maybe with him it's just moving away from religion. He renounces like rebirth and karma, the caste system, things like that. Anything else you want to know about that, David?
It was just you seemed very uh, hesitant about endorsing him, and I wondered if there was a specific reasons for that.
It's that, and I wouldn't say hesitant, just suspicious.
I
I've
mean,
always thought the story behind that is quite suspicious. I don't think he was, he didn't seem like he was really motivated by the Buddhist teachings as much as finding a political vehicle that he does great work with it. I'm clearly behind the idea of rescuing these poor people deemed untouchables. Nothing could be greater than that. So his work is really, but from a Buddhist standpoint, maybe that's why a lot of his followers were so interested in my teachings because it seemed more authentic to them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Miss Wamo, do you want to share?
oh, I was just gonna say, but I mean, isn't that amazing? Like whatever you have to do. I mean, that system is so corrupt and awful. You know what I mean? Like by any means necessary kind of thing. You know what I mean? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's like, I mean, how awful is that? You know what I mean? So does that like if you declare that, then are they free from that system? Or not
Oh,
necessarily?
not really. In fact, in the Indian system, to not have a caste is often considered worse. Like I had friends tell me they felt bad for me because I didn't have a caste. So, a lot of it's culture and how you look at things. They felt freed from being untouchables, but did other did other people consider them to be free of that? I'm not sure. But at least they didn't have to explain it to their kids when they were
Okay.
raising them, right?
That's
And
interesting.
I think that that's the practical thing to do if you're unhappy with the system. Engage in another system. So the work Mbekar did is wonderful. And then as far as at all cost, that's the age-old ethical question, right?
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
ethics like nonviolence. We have this ethic of nonviolence, but how far does that go? And are some things worth breaking our ethics? And that's a question we all have to ask ourselves at all time. Did you find the class interesting? A short one today. Since we have a little extra time, would you like me to talk about the decline of any other countries? Maybe Ethiopia or other countries I know nothing about?
Well, I had a question for you.
Yes,
So,
stand up.
so I, the question had to do with, obviously, like, Alexander the Great kind of moved into the most western part of Asia, or India, and kind of set up kind of these Greco-Asian type of societies for maybe like a couple hundred years. And I know that there was some kind of Greco-Buddhist mix in that area, and then obviously with the rise of Islam, that kind of moved on and kind of subsided. But I wondered if you knew anything about that, or if there's anything kind of maybe a perspective you could share about that topic, Brett, maybe.
Sure. Boy, it's been a while since I talked about it. I don't think I remember the names of all my Greek philosophers, but Alexander did employ a philosopher who came with him from Greece. Does anybody remember his name? Impromptu was his name. Was it? No, it wasn't. Incontinental for all your Monty
Cicerone? I don't
for
know.
for all your for all the Monty Python fans out there. But so the story goes that the philosopher that accompanies Alexander the Great into India studies quite a bit, and there is rumor that he goes back and starts the Stoic tradition based on Buddhism. So lots of stories. Some later scholars talk about that. Uh, Cross pollination happened much earlier than that because trade happened a lot earlier than they originally thought. So I think just like everywhere else in the world, right? Like we talked about, merchants and sailors and everything bring ideas around and across, and they all seem to be cross pollinating. Interesting, the first statue they say of the Buddha uh, appears to be in Greek style. So I don't think there's much for me to add to that. But I do believe they influenced each other quite a bit. I think Buddhism was influenced too. Stephen Batchelor likes to assert that Socrates and Buddha might have existed at the same time. Traditionally, we think of the Buddha existing much earlier. So that's an interesting idea.
Didn't he write a book about that?
Who?
Bachelor. Did he write a book about
Oh,
that?
his recent book is Socrates, the Buddha, and Me, I
Yeah.
think is the name of it. Or something similar to that. And My Dog Skip.
He
Oh,
didn't.
David, please.
He didn't eventually call it the Socrates, the Buddha, and Me. He thought that looked too egotistical.
I remember. Do you remember the title of the new book?
I think the next provisional one was Socrates, the Buddha, and myself.
Oh,
But
much
whatever,
better.
that's the one much better than me.
I think Us should have been.
That's doing good.
Yeah, but Stephen, yeah, and whether he even calls himself a Buddhist anymore, his new curriculum he calls Dharma, not Buddha Dharma. And he's so brilliant at so many things. He incorporates Western philosophy and a lot of the theologians. In fact, he often calls himself a modern day theologian, a Buddhist theologian. So his thing is a dharma with the mixture of all these brilliant, brilliant disciplines. Um, I feel that I really dig the Buddha, and I kind of want to just dig into the Buddha's work. I really see myself as a Buddhist, and that's where I find my home to be. Any other questions? We got a little bit of time. Oh, Miss Wamo, please. And it could be about anything.
I'm really surprised at how late Buddhism reached Japan. That's really surprising to me to see it didn't reach till the 7th century.
It's pretty far away.
Yeah, I know, but it reached Korea before Japan?
It's a little closer.
Yeah, I suppose.
Remember, they're probably walking. I don't know if they're sailing around, but I have a feeling they're just walking across the
It's
Himalayas. And
we see so many references in our Western culture of Japanese Buddhism that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh,
do you know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like that's like a really strong reference for us
we're
of
going to be talking about that next week or the week after.
okay.
We're going to be talking about the modern traditions in Eastern Buddhism.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Hey,
That's just
Dana,
surprising.
Well,
Dana, please share.
if you have any comment about the rise of Buddhism um, in the West, I know the Chinese invaded, Tibet, and then a bunch of teachers came over, and I think there was Hindus before that, really. And then, and what's the stat? What do you think the status of Buddhism is today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, and to be honest, I don't think we talk about it in the next chapter. Next chapter I just talk about what the schools. I describe the schools, but Probably after that, we should do a chapter on Western Buddhism. So Tibetan Buddhism is fairly new on the scene. Some say that in the UK, Theravada Buddhism was the first, and that, of course, it comes from England's colonialism of their takeover of India and Sri Lanka. So that comes from there. For America, they say it starts on the West Coast with Chinese immigrants that bring Chan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism to the West Coast. Hinduism comes in, right, a little bit before the Beatles. The Beatles usher in more of it. Buddhism comes in a bit after that, more with the Beat movement, if I'm not mistaken. I should probably know, like, the first teacher to bring Buddhism. Chogyam Trungpa's pretty early on, but there's people before him.
Well, people like maybe Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg.
Oh,
and
that's
they
much
studied,
later.
Oh, because they studied with Ajahn Chah, didn't they?
They're all
Yeah.
Ajahn Chah students. That's
Yes.
Theravada.
Yeah.
That would be much later. That's the mindfulness movement. Yeah.
Maybe like a Alan Watts, maybe.
I was just
Alan
about to ask about Alan Watts, what you thought about him.
So Alan Watts is Zen or Chan, and yeah, he comes in he's kind of like a Joseph Campbell kind of guy. PBS, he's on PBS and stuff. I think the most interesting things about him, Alan Watts, are what he says about himself, and he says that he's not a Buddhist. He's an entertainer, and he said that on several occasions. And from the little I know about him, I heard that his personal life was clearly not a practitioner. So, but, by far one of the most interesting speakers. He had such a way of talking about Buddhism. I'm not Zen Buddhist, so a lot of his ideas are far removed from my belief system. But quite an entertainer. And of course,
who was the Zen writer about that time that did so many translations? Can't
Suzuki
remember
Roshi?
his name.
Suzuki
He
Roshi,
was
maybe?
Suzuki. That may be it. I think that's it. Just thinking of who could be, who was in that era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was D.T. Suzuki, I think.
And then with the invasion of Tibet by Chinese forces, the Dalai Lama in exile, the rise of the Dalai Lama in popularity, and Tibetans fleeing the country, became this great insurgent of Buddhism in the world in the guise of Tibetan Buddhism. Now it spreads like nothing the world's ever seen. Zen Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, very, very slow movements coming into the West. Tibetan Buddhism hits it like a storm. And in a handful of short years, there's a Tibetan Buddhist Dharma center in every state in America. And so then, of course, I jumped on board as well. I was a big fan. So that was quite extraordinary. Kat, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just remembering that Jack Kerouac had that book, didn't he, in the 50s, The Dharma Bums. So I think he was like influenced by Buddhism. Yeah, like you say, in the Beat generation.
But doesn't Kerouac start more with the Bhagavad Gita? I know, like Emerson.
Yeah.
Some of
I think kind of a mixture. Yeah, Walt Whitman.
A lot of them come from the Bhagavad Gita, then move into Buddhism slowly. Yeah, good call. Very nice. Frank, would you like to share?
There is a text, How the Swans Came to the Lake, that is a history of how Buddhism came to America. I think they actually trace the first tastes of it through the folks with the Theosophy movement, and I think it's Madame Blavatsky actually was involved in Buddhism and brought some of it over. But I'm happy to lend the book.
That's early. I'm not sure if it's initial. And of course, they were really found to be charlatans. And early Buddhism in the Tibetan Buddhism in the West were just books of mystery and intrigue and magic, and the West just ate it up, but not so authentic. And yeah, they had some very strange groups, and of course, this is where Marta Kurti. Can you help me out? Anybody remember his name? Not Chandakirti.
Krishnamurti.
Yeah, Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
He rises out of that. He abandons them completely and goes out on his own. And so, yeah, they fall apart. They're seen as charlatans. And pretty interesting history of Buddhism throughout the years. Yeah. And then there was the rise of SBT in 2000 by the esteemed master Tenzin, what's his name? Anybody remember his name? Oh, he was a card, wasn't he? He was a pill. Hey, anybody? The Buddhist Society. Hey, with that said, why don't we move on? Thanks for sharing this with me today. It was a lot of fun sharing it. Of course, today is retreat day, and we got lots of more fun stuff coming up. In about 45 minutes, we have our vow ceremony. We're giving refuge to a couple fortunate participants, and we're doing some purification of vows. It's going to be a lot of fun. After that, we're going to do our final loving kindness meditation and some Sangha chat to finish off our retreat. Sure hope everybody can make it. The vow ceremony is open to everyone. It's a short and beautiful ceremony. Please come. And so with that said, why don't we end today's meditation with our why don't we end today's teaching with our altruistic affirmation? May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry, may all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks for joining me, friends. Bye-bye.